The NBA continues, and man, there have been stories all over the NBA as we get closer to All-Star Weekend. Chris Mannix, NBC Sports Radio, the 24/7 live sports talk network. Listen at NBCSportsRadio.com. Hi, Chris. What's going on, pal?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
We're all good. I know that the NBA is getting around the All-Star break here, but as we get in there, I mean, there's a litany of things that are happening here. What would be at the top of your list of most intriguing NBA stories right now? Because I think you could put them in a hat, pull them out, and we'd have fun discussing.
Oh, I think it's still Cleveland and exactly how they treat this roster going into the February 8th trade deadline. The trade deadline is weeks before the All-Star break for the first time. The league moved that up as part of their revamping of the schedule, and it creates even more pressure on that front office to make a deal. And there are a lot of variables here. I mean, I think eventually you're going to see a George Hill trade. I think Sacramento's trying to bleed the Cavs a little bit more before they agree to terms on that deal, but that doesn't solve the primary problems in Cleveland. And the big question is going to be, will they include that Brooklyn Nets pick in a deal for a significant player, or do they just have the faith that there is a switch they can flip that will make them a better defensive team and get them back to the finals? I'm fascinated. I don't have any of these answers. I think that they're canvassing the league right now, from what other teams tell me, looking for an upgrade in talent, but right, they're saying one way or the other whether that Brooklyn Nets pick will be on the table.
Chris, right now you got Cleveland really in a funk or whatever, but realistically, do you think that they have the want and ability to make a major deal to fix this thing? I know they got that draft pick, but would they move Love? I mean, Thomas, would they pull the trigger on a big deal like that, or is it more just something small that they hope gets them back on track?
Well, I think they'd move anybody in a deal that would bring them back a player that would make them better in the postseason. I mean, they'd love to get their hands on Paul George, but the way Oklahoma City's been playing, that seems unlikely. Plus, if you heard the comments Paul George made to Rachel Nichols, he seems pretty happy playing alongside Russell Westbrook. So if you're Oklahoma City, you've got to feel confident, at least to some degree, that Paul George will stay long-term. So that's not going to be on the table. Kemba Walker, does he make you significantly better? I don't know. Is he worth breaking up your core for that? I don't know. I think they deal anybody, frankly. I mean, I think Kevin Love, Tristan Thompson, Isaiah, anybody outside of LeBron, I think would be on the table. I don't see a player out there or players that would make the Cavaliers more playoff ready. The only thing they can do to put themselves in contention, at least to beat Boston, possibly more, is to trade that Nets pick to get maybe a DeAndre Jordan or somebody else, and that would be, and that they might not want to do that.
We also know that in the East, as we've kind of talked about many times here, Chris, you've got Boston at the top, you got Toronto there, but I want to ask you about Miami in the fourth spot here. Are we believing in Miami? They've won 7 out of 10. I mean, is that a team that we feel pretty secure about in the East? Because if you're one of those teams behind, I think you kind of feel like Miami's one of those teams that will come back to the pack and you can pass.
Well, I mean, if you're waiting for Miami to kind of crater, you're probably going to be waiting a long time. I don't think there's a team in basketball that plays harder than the Miami Heat. I don't think there's a team in basketball that is more disciplined than the Miami Heat. And I just think they're going to be there. They may not be the 4th seed, but they're not going to fall, I think, any lower than 6th because of just how hard they play and their talent level. I mean, Goran Dragic, I think, is a borderline all-star. I don't think he was snubbed, but he's a borderline all-star. Hassan Whiteside, when he's playing on his game, is one of the top 5 centers in basketball. So that would be a team I really wouldn't want to play in the first round of the playoffs because of just how dangerous they can be, because of how they execute, how well they're coached. People can criticize Miami all they want for not rebuilding in the sort of Philadelphia way, but this is what comes out of it. You have a team that believes in itself and plays harder than anybody else in the league.
I know we talk about Philly a lot, and they had won, 7 out of 8, 8 out of 9. They lost the one game in Memphis, and Chris, I'm taking calls to fire the coach again while the Eagles are getting ready for the Super Bowl. It's unbelievable that one loss like that, and the way they do it all the time. I mean, they break out to these leads, and it happens almost nightly. Last night they blew the Bulls out and kind of held them off, but You would be amazed at how many people here are just ready to move on from Brett Brown.
Well, I mean, I think that's premature. I mean, the struggles that Philadelphia is having, the games I've watched, are like struggles straight out of central casting. They're the struggles that every team that has had a lot of high-level talent with expectations on it have gone through. They don't know how to win at end of games. There's nothing you can do to change that except go through it, lose these games, and learn from them. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, we've discussed this before, that being in the playoff mix right now is a major accomplishment for this team. Now, next year, if you want to have a different conversation next year, if they're doing the exact same things next year, I think it's fair game to discuss Brett Brown's job security and exactly what if he's the right man for this job. But right now, making mistakes in the fourth quarter, not executing in the fourth quarter, go back and look what Oklahoma City did early on their time. Go back and look at what Kobe Bryant did early in his career. He was throwing balls off the backboard early in his career in end-of-game situations. It's a fact of life that guys have to go through this crap before they become, they reach their potential.
Now, Chris, you mentioned the trade deadlines earlier this year. Does that, in your mind, mean the propensity for bigger names to be traded or not? I mean, I know Paul George's name comes up a lot. Oklahoma City, they got that situation out there. Do you think because it's earlier that bigger names won't be moved, or do you think that will make teams move their big names that they want out of there?
Well, I'm skeptical. And look, you have to get to like the 2-week-ish mark before, and we're kind of around there, the 2-week-ish mark before teams really start to show their hand. I'm skeptical we see a big name move, largely because I don't see a big name out there that makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, DeMarcus Cousins is not going to be traded. I mean, the Pelicans are far more likely right now to give Cousins a 5-year, $175 million deal than they are to actually trade him. Kemba Walker, does he move the needle? Yeah, sure, he could potentially be dealt, but I think more likely than not, the deals that happened this offseason or for the trade deadline are supporting deals. I think Tyreek Evans in Memphis, who's had a great year, could be moved. Yeah. Lou Williams, if the Clippers want to go a different direction, try to rebuild and get a first-round pick for him, he could be moved. Maybe DeAndre Jordan if they go full rebuild, but I just don't see the seismic landscape-changing deal out there right now.
He's Chris Mannix, NBC Sports, of course, covers the NBA. Listen to the NBC Sports app. Download it today, NBCSportsRadio.com. Sixers beat the Bulls last night pretty handily. It was a big game by Ben Simmons with a triple-double at halftime. More on that coming up. Chris, always a pleasure, pal.
You got it. Anytime.